As a kid, all a nigga wanna have was a Burberry scarf and $3 in my pocket. Instead I got beat with a switch, but I don't give a fuck, but it's on my body. Scars all up on me, but I run around from everybody. Life lesson learned, I better learn from this bitch, nobody. She pushed me around, she didn't give no motherfucks about it. She broke my heart 3 times, but I ain't getting...
Now, I believe that the Chargers are getting really disrespected by a lot of people. Because a lot of people, you know, they're just sleeping on the Chargers. They don't think that the Chargers are going to be all that great. And when I ask people, I say, hey, man, why do you think that the Chargers are not going to be good this year? And they say, oh, JT, look at their quarterback, man. Tyrod Taylor is going to be their quarterback. Or Justin Herbert is going to be their quarterback. And here's what I tell them. I say, look, Tyrod Taylor may not be the greatest quarterback in the world, but you can win games with Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor's on a Chargers team that has a pretty good amount of talent. Okay, you got Keenan Allen and you got Mike Williams as your 2 best receivers. You also got Hunter Henry, who happens to be in the contract year. Well, not even in the contract year. He's looking to get a new contract since he's playing on a franchise tag. And he is one of the better tight ends that we have in the NFL when he's healthy. Then you got Austin Eckler in the backfield. So, I mean, Tyrod Taylor has a lot of weapons at his disposal. Now, the offensive line was also a big issue last season. Now, the offensive line has improved. They brought in Trey Turner, and you bring in Brian Bulaga and free agency from Green Bay. So, the offensive line should be a lot better than what it was last season. And listen, you don't have to have a great quarterback to win games in the NFL and to make it to the playoffs. I say this several times, and I'm going to say it again. Tyrod Taylor is a good enough quarterback that he can get this Los Angeles Chargers team to the playoffs. A lot of people forget that a couple of years back with the Buffalo Bills, he took a Buffalo Bills team to the playoffs that had less talent than what he has to work with now. So if he was able to take the Buffalo Bills to the playoffs, considering the fact that they didn't even have a true number 1 wide receiver that year, I think that he's going to be able to get this Chargers team to the playoffs. And I think that a lot of people also are talking about how good that this Los Angeles Chargers defense is going to be. This Los Angeles Chargers defense, in my opinion, most likely could be the best defense in the NFL by the end of this 2020 NFL season. In my opinion, they have the best secondary in the NFL, at least on paper. At the cornerback position, you got Chris Harris Jr. in free agency, who happens to be one of the more underrated cornerbacks in the NFL from the past decade. You also have Desmond King. You got Casey Hayward. Then at the safety position, you're either going to have Nazir Adderley or Rayshawn Jenkins, or you're either going to have Rayshawn Jenkins paired up with Derwin James or Nazir Adderley paired up with Derwin James. Then the defensive line is also going to be really good as well. You got Linval Joseph. Linval Joseph is one of the best run-stopping defensive tackles that we have in the NFL right now. Then you got Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa rushing on the opposite sides of each other. And those two also make up one of the better pass rushing duos in the NFL. You also got my guy Jared Tillery. I almost forgot about him. So this is a Los Angeles Chargers defense that is really scary. Now, linebacker is a question, but they did address linebacker in this past year's NFL draft by drafting Kenneth Murray in the first round. So I like this Chargers team a lot. I may be a little bit higher on the Chargers than a lot of you guys, but I just don't see how a lot of people think that the Chargers can just go 13 or 3-13 or 4-12 or 5-11. Like, I think that's a little bit ridiculous. Like, I think the Chargers deserve a little bit more respect. Anthony Lynn, I think, is on the hot seat. Now, Anthony Lynn is coming off a really disappointing season in 2019 because a lot of people had Super Bowl aspirations for the Chargers going into 2019 based on what they did in 2018. But they didn't really live up to those. And the big reason for that was, you know, I think that Phillip Rivers kind of held back the Chargers a little bit because he turned the ball over so much. And that's not a knock against Phillip Rivers. I still think that Phillip Rivers is a pretty doggone good quarterback. But we got to call a spade a spade. When you turn the football over at the rate that he did, you're not really going to win a lot of games. And I know the offensive line play wasn't all the greatest, but I mean, come on, man. He did have a pretty good amount. He had a couple of games that he was just absolutely terrible. So now you bring in the guy in Tyrod Taylor who's a little bit more conservative with the football, doesn't turn the football over a lot, doesn't take a lot of shots deep, but he's efficient and he's smart and he's accurate with the football. You also get a lot more mobility with Tyrod Taylor, and that's something that also held back this Chargers offense, because Phillip Rivers, although he is a good quarterback, something that held him back a lot was his lack of mobility. And when the offensive line was breaking down constantly, he didn't have any athleticism to move around the pocket or run around the pocket and extend plays or pick up 4 or 5 yards to keep the chains moving. So I think with Tyrod Taylor, that's going to open up this LA Chargers playbook on the offensive side of football to a different level, because now you can run more read options, you can run some quarterback design runs. So I think that Tyrod Taylor is a little bit disrespected. I know he's not the greatest quarterback of the world, doesn't have the strongest arm or anything like that, but he is a good enough quarterback that he can win you some games and he can get you to the playoffs. And I mean, when you look at how good this defense is, I mean, this offense doesn't really have to do much, because this defense, in my opinion, should be the best defense in the NFL. And I mean, look, if he was able to take the Buffalo Bills to the playoffs a couple of seasons ago, he should be able to do the same thing with the Chargers. Now, although the Chargers are in a more competitive division, because you got to compete with the Denver Broncos, who are also going to be really good. The Las Vegas Raiders could also be really good. And, of course, you got to deal with the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. So, I mean, this is going to be a really tough division. But, I mean, if there was a team that I would have a lot of confidence in, that I think could surprise a lot of people, that is a really deep sleeper. And I'm not talking about your casual sleepers like the Denver Broncos, but I'm talking about your deep sleepers. It will probably be the Los Angeles Chargers. Like, I really like this Los Angeles Chargers team. I really think that a lot of people are kind of sleeping on the Chargers this year. Like, this defense is really good. Then you got Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler is probably going to have a Christian McCaffrey kind of season. When you look at what he's able to do, not only just running the football, but he's also really good as well in the passing game. You can line him up in certain formations and certain offensive sets. He can end up being your third best wide receiver on the field, depending on the situation. And I think that him and Tyrod Taylor are going to have a pretty good connection. When you look at the fact that, you know, he's probably going to be running a lot of short intermediate routes, which is something that Tyrod Taylor loves to throw, because he doesn't really take a lot of chances deep. So, I mean, this Chargers team, I think that this Chargers team is one of the more talented teams in the NFL. Now, of course, the offensive line is going to be a little bit of a concern. Although they have improved a little bit on the offensive line, I still think that they still have a couple of room to grow there. But overall, I think this is a Chargers team that probably could go 8-8, 9-7, and sneak in into the AFC playoffs and get one of those lower seeds, like either that 7th or 6th seed. I think the Chargers are going to be able to do that. So, I mean, I don't really know why a lot of people don't like the Chargers. I know, other than the quarterback position and the offensive line being a little bit shaky, like, I think that this is a pretty good team. The offensive line, at least when you look at it on paper, isn't even bad. It's just that one spot that they have to work at one of those offensive tackle spots. But other than that, this offensive line should be pretty rock solid this year. So, I mean, the Los Angeles Chargers, man, are probably the biggest sleeper going into this season, aside from the Denver Broncos. Now, I know a lot of people are sleeping on the Patriots as well, but when you look at a team that has talent, you can't overlook this Los Angeles Chargers team.